Hi, I'm Kat. I play Sims, and this is my attempt at the Anxiety Shell Challenge by Rochella. I did accidentally bulldoze it at first and find a little Easter egg in the terrain paint. I started roofing pretty much straight away after I'd spun it around a little bit. I am not a good roofer, and it took us a little while to work out what I was going to do. I used a half wall to create a chimney on one section and then decided to use fence to make balcony areas wherever I couldn't work out how to roof them. I got an idea in my head of the kind of Sims who were going to live here, so I placed this lot in Chestnut Ridge, and I wanted almost a ranch style because I wanted to use the items from Horse Ranch. But because I'm from the UK and we don't do ranch, I've got quite a lot of shortcomings in that area. So I decided just to do it as if these Sims were wealthy-ish, bought the land and asked an architect to give them a ranch but modern, so that I could just use 1,000 windows and make it really strange. I did go for a mix of stone and wood on the outside just to make it a little bit more interesting, and I gave it an exterior trim to hide some of the more unusual things like the overhangs. After I got this bit of the exterior to my liking, I had a quick look inside and realised there was an interior wall that was going to affect where I put the doors, and then I just started adding glass doors and 1,000 large windows to make it as light as possible. I went for a quite yellow colour scheme on this one. I wanted it light and bright and decided to lean into it really hard with the doors from Nifty Knitting on a couple of the larger balcony spaces, just to give it a really bright pop of colour. I added dark wood to the bottoms of all the fenced in areas. Once I bobbed around a bit and made sure everything was to my liking, I fenced off an enormous area to turn into a yard space, and then I started thinking about outdoor decoration. I grabbed a few planter boxes from Lovestruck and also from Cottage Living, and I started adding as many yellow plants as possible to the open spaces. I found quite a lot of different climbing plants and trellises and stuff just to make it more interesting on the outside and covered as many spaces as I could. I grabbed a couple of bits of outdoor lighting just to put around the entrances, and then I started thinking about landscaping. I went into Live Edit and got as much from Horse Ranch as I possibly could, started trying to use low lying bushes and things to fill in big space. As I went, I did try to make sure stuff wasn't going to clip in the house, but at the end, when I did the screenshots, I discovered that I hadn't done a great job and there was still some stuff coming through windows in places. I tried as much as possible to fill some of the giant blank spaces around the edges and the windows, just with low lying things, rocks, bushes, and some nice yellow flowers. When I ran out of things from the Horse Ranch debug that I liked, I just switched to base game items and filled in more gaps with grasses and low lying bushes and plants. Once I was happy, the last thing I needed outside was terrain paint, so I just stuck some dirt under the plants and around the edges of the house and fence, and eventually I put in some paving at the front and at the back to make a seating area later on. I actually drew a really strange shape for the paving in the back, but it was about my fourth attempt at that point and I just decided to leave it and move on. Once I got inside, I had to work out where to put the stairs, which took us a little while because I tried quite a few different shapes and places. The downstairs floor plan came together pretty well, but upstairs was a different story. I couldn't decide what I wanted where, and I ended up with some really weird shapes. I put fencing around the stairs, which I changed later on to match the fencing outside, and I tried to make two bedrooms, a large bathroom, and then I ended up with a really strange shaped hallway. I grabbed the floor texture from outside just to put in most of the areas of the house. I got a light from Cozy Kitch for the front and then just put the little saucer lights everywhere else so I could see what I was doing properly. The interior doors I used upstairs are from Lovestruck. They're a bit strange because they've got a little grate in them, but they match the colour scheme I was going for perfectly, so I just left them. When I eventually put the stair rail in, I made sure I matched it to the fence upstairs because there were two different ones from Horse Ranch. Back downstairs, I started looking at the walls. I wanted a galley style kitchen in this corner, so I used the Home Chef Hustle tile and then sectioned it off with spandrels and columns just to make it a little bit more interesting. Once I was happy with how that separated, I picked a wallpaper for the rest of the house, which was a violent yellow with white trim. I considered changing it, but decided in the end that it was going to stay everywhere, and I picked a yellow tile for the bathrooms as well. I did miss a little section of wallpaper around the stairs, but I fix it eventually. I decided to start with the kitchen and got the big appliances in, which I think are from Kitchen Clutter and possibly Home Chef Hustle. I used the base game counters that we got in an update a little while ago, and I just sized up the fridge to make it fit a bit better between the counters. I got my favourite sink in from the Kitchen Clutter kit, and I started thinking about upper cabinets, but they were a little bit too blocky in this section, so I went for open shelving instead. I like a cluttered kitchen in The Sims, so I added a load of different little bits and pieces from kits. I also ended up adding another set of counters on the back wall so that I'd have room for things like the hanging fruit and veg from the kitchen clutter kit. I just grabbed a bunch of different pieces for the shelves and the counters and then tried to arrange it nicely. I had a lot of trouble with certain items not slotting correctly even when I went backwards and forwards trying to arrange them, so bits and pieces ended up in different areas than I wanted them in the first place just because they were being so incredibly awkward. If it didn't make things challenging to place, it wouldn't really be The Sims. I spent a lot of time cluttering up the shelves and surfaces, trying to get as much as I possibly could out. There's the functional cereal and cookie jar. I got a few storage containers and bits and pieces for the shelves. I tried cluttering the top of the fridge a little bit, but the stairs were interfering, so I gave up on that. I added some little decorative pieces on the other side, like cutting boards and utensils on the walls. I did wind up moving some of them closer to the oven because it just felt more realistic. I spent a little while trying to force appliances to slot in a nice way with the cups. In the end, I gave up and just put the kettle on the other side and moved the cleaning supplies a little bit as well. I decided that I could put some upper cabinets on the back wall because it wasn't as cramped, so I just added a couple of those and then put a little rug down, resized it with tools so it fit a bit nicer. I considered doing the office space next, but decided to do the living room instead, so I added a horse ranch fireplace and a little surround that we got a while back in an update. I made a little cubby next to the door with columns and spandrels and moved a curtain into place so that it looked like it could be sectioned off. I just put things like a coat rack and some clothes, some shoes and backpacks in the space to make it look a little bit more realistic, and a couple of cardboard boxes to fill the space. I stuck a yoga mat and kettlebell in there as well, and I really liked how it all looked in the end. The next thing I moved on to was the other side of the front door. I wanted a biggish accent table, but wound up using two horse ranch ones and nesting one of them because I couldn't find anything the right size. I added a mirror and a few bits of clutter, and then I moved back in the living room. I used the Cozy Kitch kit because I really like the way the sofa looks with the few cushions on it, and it fit the colour scheme really well. I wound up using a storybook nursery rug and just sizing it up and then trying to make other things in the space match that colour scheme. As usual, I stuck the Desert Lux curtains in there and used a rail to make it look like one continuous area, and then I put another column and a little bit of artwork up just to fill the space. I brought in that lamp from Cozy Kitch in a blue to match the rug and just sort of cluttered little bits and pieces by the bookcase. And I put down an end table from the Crystal Creations kit with comfy gamer clutter on it. As usual, it took us quite a while to arrange everything, but once I was done with that, I moved on to wall art. I used some colourful cross-stitch hoops on the diagonal wall, and then one of my favourite items from the Pride update we got a little while ago, and some of the wooden bits and pieces, and I just moved everything around to make the walls as glittered as possible. I used a mat from Cats and Dogs and sized it up to fit the door nicely, and when I went to do the dining room, I had to fix a little bit of clipping that was happening in the corner. As usual, I went looking in Dream Home Decorator for a table and got Cozy Kitch chairs in a variety of colours, sort of to match the colour scheme of the sitting room. I got a horse ranch rug and put it on a slight angle to make it more interesting, and then it was mostly Cozy Kitch artwork as well. I wedged a plant in the gap between two columns in the kitchen and then went back to try and find artwork for next to the back door. I ended up playing around a little bit with a corner item with plants and sized it down to make it fit. After I'd had a look around, I remembered to paint all the ceilings, which is rare for me, and then I moved on to the bathroom. This is technically a full bathroom because it has a shower in it. I used the Sleek Bathroom kit for just about everything in here. All the usual bits and pieces of bathroom clutter in here, and I put a divider in between the toilet and shower, also from Sleek Bathroom kit. I just put down some soap, some towels, everything sticking the yellow colour theme. I got a little bath mat, grabbed a few blinds for the windows, and then started picking little bits of yellow artwork to go on the walls in here. After the bathroom, I did move on to the office, but the first thing I had to do was move the plants that were already clipping in the walls and windows. I used a dark wood desk in here and stuck to the half modern, half ranch theme, and while I was at it, I grabbed a couple of alarms and the thermostat for next to the front door. I used the Modern Lux bookcase and then went straight back to Cozy Kitch for the love seat in here. I tried making a little gallery wall at the back, but for now I actually forgot to decorate the larger wall. I think I went back to it later on. I added a plant by the window and briefly considered a different curtain, but ended up resorting straight back to the Desert Lux kit as I always do. I used a rug from Comfy Gamer in here in a neutral tone and then just sized it up a little bit with tulle to fit the space better. I cluttered up the desktop with a couple of bits like a cup, a post-it note and a desk organizer and just rearranged that all so it fit a little bit better. I'm not entirely sure how functional it is because Sims can be a little bit funny about using the computer on cluttered desks, but once I was done in there, I moved on upstairs. I did fix the wallpaper on the bottom there, and I wasn't entirely sure what to do with this corner, so I wound up putting a corkboard and a dartboard up there. And then I moved on to the primary bedroom. I used Dream Home Decorator again and the Businesses and Hobbies dresser. The upstairs rooms are really strange shapes. I wound up alt placing a TV stand at the end of the bed in this one just to fill in some space. I stuck with the yellow colour scheme in here, but decided to make it a lot brighter with a pale wood floor and a vampires wallpaper, I think it is. And then I put a nice sort of floral rug in there, a mirror, some hanging plants. Lots of bits and pieces just to fill in the spaces, and I think I put a couple of empty photo frames in here just so that Sims can put pictures of their family up. I moved on to the upstairs bathroom, and unsurprisingly there's a lot of sleek bathroom in there. I think the sink is from a different pack, but I can't remember which one, and I used a Love Struck mirror. I just sort of cluttered little bits and pieces here and there as usual, stuck some towels and things up, and my favourite shelf from Tiny Living above the bath. Honestly, all of my bathrooms are effectively the same thing, just in different sizes. I tiled the bathroom, finished cluttering it, got a curtain, a bath mat and some artwork up, and then I had to move on to the smaller bedroom. I've got a Modern Looks piece of artwork in here that I use quite a lot, and also Dream Home Decorator. I wanted to make the bedroom for a sort of in-between stage sim, somewhere between child and teen, and I made a completely different colour scheme to the rest of the house, although there are yellow elements in there. I went for mostly purple. I used Comfy Gamer, Pastel Pop, and a couple of other bits and pieces in here. This space is decorated more for a young sim who likes gaming and things like that. I made it really, really bright with a Love Struck wallpaper and I think a high school years rug, and then the computer from Comfy Gamer and a few bits of clutter on the desk as well. I was leaning into a young gamer aesthetic in here. I used a lava lamp, quite a few different bits of game clutter. I had artwork from a few different packs. I just wanted posters from as many places as possible. There's stuff from Growing Together and a few others, and the posters from Comfy Gamer. I added neon lights and things like that to the walls. I had one above the mirror in the corner, and then I went for some much brighter curtains in here. Just as kind of an afterthought, I went outside and added a telescope onto the balcony, but I really don't know if it's functional, and then I went to decorate the stairs. I realised the white trim on the wallpaper didn't work so well there because it sort of cut the wall in half. Once I'd got rid of the white trim, I tried to make a gallery wall on the stairs just with a few different bits of artwork from different packs. I put up a hanging plant and then scooted the door a little bit for it. I decided to put a rocking chair outside, but I don't know if it even had enough room in the end to be functional. I just decorated behind it and then went back upstairs. There was an inaccessible section behind the stairs that I just wanted to put a big mirror and some plants in to make it a little bit more interesting. Finally, I turned my attention to the backyard area. I put a few loungers out. I think they're from Riviera Retreat. And I put some barrels and a picnic basket just so that I could have a variety of food and drink out here. I decided to put in a fire pit and the romantic garden wishing well hidden away at one side, and I made quite a big pool to fill in the gaps. I gave the pool the various bits it needed and put another floating lounger on there as well. Just tiled it to make it match the colour scheme and put a few lights and things in there, and then I went back up to do the yard space again. I decided I wanted a grill and a bar out here, which both gave us a lot of trouble because I could not find countertops that would match them, and I wanted to make a sort of little built-in area. So I spent a lot of time changing colours backwards and forwards with those to see if I could get anything to fit right. I eventually just added a picnic table and called it good here. I moved a few little things around just to make them not as close to each other and decided I was done with that. So thanks for watching and enjoy the screenshots. Thank you for watching. Please consider a like and subscribe.